Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brownstone. I'm your host, Dr. Michele, and you're listening to Numbers Don't Lie. We learn to get out your feelings so you can make the best decisions for yourself, your family, and your business. Okay, y'all, this is a super exciting episode, and I probably hype y'all up every single time. But I think this one is worth the hype because I get to reconnect with someone that I met, years ago. I'll say almost, okay, like 17 years ago. That's still a long time. That's a teenager. You know what I'm saying? That's a teenager years old. So really excited for this next guest. We met while we were students in college. We were both secondary mathematics education majors, y'all. Both of us. It wasn't really anybody in our major like that. I don't know about him, but when I graduated, it only had my name under the major. But we were few in number, but we formed a really great friendship. So I'm really excited to have him up here. He's done tremendous things in education. Teacher, just like I was, went working his way on up, administrator, and now he's in the doctoral program. And I'll let him tell you all about it, but making really big moves, which is a really big deal to find Black men in education because they make a huge difference. So I'm excited to get this episode started. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, Tremaine Holloway.
Hey, I appreciate that warm welcome in the intro. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to be here, right? Like you said, this goes back to undergrad. So
Yeah.
I remember many a days and nights reaching out to you for help for math because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have graduated. So I'm grateful for you, Michelle, for being here. She is really the math rock star. I'm just living in her shadow. So I really appreciate you.
Whatever. Oh, good times, man. Good times. Okay. So, Tremaine, could you tell the people a little bit about yourself and then, like, how you even made it to where you are?
Yeah. So I think I would be remiss if I don't mention where I come from. So again, my name is Tremaine Holloway, and I'm originally from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, born and raised. So 252. My mother was an educator for 30 plus years. She actually taught me when I was in high school, which was a very interesting experience. But I live to say that I've survived it, right? my my dad was a deacon in the church that I grew up in. My sister currently works on the elementary level as a kindergarten teacher, and both my grandmothers were community organizers, but my maternal grandmother is most known for her work during the civil rights movement. She worked with
Oh,
folks like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton during those times. So, because of that, I feel like I come from a family who really values acts of service as the highest form of compensation. And with that mindset, to be honest with you, that was never really my goal, or I didn't want to subscribe to that when I was younger. All right. I had ambitions and aspirations to be a professional athlete. I thought I was either going to go to the NBA or the NFL. Um, Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but it's all good. I ended up bouncing back. A really pivotal moment happened when I was in high school that really kind of shifted my mindset and thinking about education. While I was playing football at the time, I actually suffered an injury. Um, a 300-pound lineman actually fell on a leg and broke it in
oh
two
my
places.
gosh.
Yeah, so when that happened, a lot of those dreams, a lot of those college coaches actually stopped recruiting and looking at me as a liability rather than an asset. But grateful for a mother who really valued education and stayed on me. So I always had relatively good grades in school, and so I was able to go to North Carolina Central University where we
Whoop,
met.
whoop.
Right? All right, exactly. Eagles. That was Eagle Pride Amplified, and had that opportunity to, still go to school on a full academic scholarship. And grateful that for coaches like Coach Dickerson, Henry Dickerson, rest in peace, and well as Coach Lavelle Moulton, who's the current coach at Central, who still gave me an opportunity to play basketball. But being at Central really cultivated my mindset to think more about education. Also, because that scholarship that I received it had an attachment that I had to teach for at least 4 years.
I had one of those,
After
man. I only
so
had
it
to do
kept me
three,
locked
though.
in. Yeah, yeah. So you see, you didn't have to do a longer bid than I did. So like 4 years was a bid in my opinion. But grateful, right? Like I had that chance, majored in mathematics, secondary education, graduated and began to teach, right? So started in Durham Public Schools at Middle College High School as a math teacher, did that for 4 years. had the opportunity there to really cultivate relationships and had a great mentor from Central, Ontario Wooden, Dr. Ontario Wooden, who really pushed me to think about school administration, school leadership, and because of his positive peer pressure in telling me that, hey, I think you can be a phenomenal school leader, a phenomenal administrator. You need to go to your graduate school and get your degrees. I'm only going to write you a degree. I'm only going to write you a recommendation for one school, and the school is Harvard University. So, had it not been for him believing in me more than I believed in myself, I wouldn't be able to tell you that I'm currently at Harvard now, right? So, having that push was something that really is I felt like really set me on a trajectory to my goals and dreams and aspirations that I have now. So just fast forward in there, right? Was able to go come to Harvard University in 2016, receive my master's degree in school leadership and administration. Beyond that, decided to follow my curiosity with the hopes that it would lead me to my passion. Ended up landing in the greater Seattle area. Had never been there before. Sight unseen, just following my curiosity. And did ended up staying out there for about 7 years. I was able to become a principal out there, founded a school out there for the past couple of years, and just had a really great experience growing professionally. And now back on the East Coast here, back in the doctoral program here at Harvard University, and just grateful for the moments and the experiences to be able to do this with my family alongside me. I think this has been just awesome to have my wife and children here to experience this with me as well. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, yeah,
That was
that's me.
good. I know all that.
Yeah.
But I echo your sentiment about having people that see something in you because got my PhD program. I got my PhD in epidemiology, and all I knew was education. And granted,
Mm,
math, stats, all that, but all I knew was education. And so I was working under her, like I was actually working at NCCU.
mm.
And she was like, and I had other people, like I had uncles like, you should go back to school. And I was just kind of like, I mean, whatever. But was like when she said it, and I was like, but what would I do? Like, I don't know what I'll go back. I was kind of very comfortable. What would I do? And she was like, epidemiology. And I was like, what's that? And she encouraged me to go to an Ivy League school. I ended up going to University of South Carolina, not because I didn't want to, but I didn't want to wait a whole nother year. Because some of those application deadlines was like quick. And I was like, I had
That's
made a
real.
decision like November. So I was like, I'm not trying to wait till next year.
That's
But
real
she
though.
pushed
That's real.
me, and here I am.
Beautiful.
I know mentors are
Dr.
needed.
Shell. Yeah,
I know, Dr.
absolutely.
Shell. Listen, they don't know me by that. Shh.
Oh, my bad, my bad, my bad. My bad. I know you. So I'll keep that
Right?
between us.
I'm Dr. Michelle Young.
Dr. Michelle. There we go. Dr. Michelle. Absolutely. Let me make
It's
sure I
all
put some
good.
respect on your name.
But no, this is so good already. All right, let me get into it
Yeah.
because we got some ground to cover. All right, so like people call me the data doc or whatever. And then I
Mhm,
came from the school that I was at while I was at Durham Public Schools as well. Our principal was really focused on data-driven decisions. And back then,
mhm.
I mean, I knew what he meant, but like I had my degree in stats by that time. So, but I really wasn't, it wasn't clicking for me the same way it is now. So, how
Mhm.
has your experience been like, whether you're in the classroom or the administration level, with incorporating data in your day-to-day decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Incorporating data day to day, especially with like high level decision making, has been like of ultimate importance for me. It's probably the paramount important factor as being a building administrator, as being a principal. Just some examples I can give you. The school that we started out in Seattle, Washington, essentially was a school that was based on the industry in itself that Seattle. So Seattle has three big industries. The tech industry is pretty big. Folks know Amazon and Microsoft. So when you think about Seattle, you think about those two corporations. But then you have the Port of Seattle, which actually is supportive of both the aeronautical and the aviation industry, as well as the maritime marine science industry as well.
Nice.
So the school that I was able to work and create and build before coming back to graduate school was a maritime theme focused school. And so we used a lot of data decision making to figure out whom should we actually be targeting. Um, and so that example is the industry at the time, and it still is relatively like this. But at the time, the maritime industry in Seattle, the job for workforce was taken up by 80% white men. And so with the pandemic happening, there was this silver tsunami happening where people were beginning to retire out, like those who have been
Mm-hmm.
in the industry for 30, 40 plus years, right? Now this pandemic hits, they're like, okay, we don't want to continue to do this anymore. We're gonna bow out. And so left a need for
Yeah.
creating a pipeline necessary to, fill those positions that weren't there. And luckily, being in the school district I was in, Highline Public Schools, it was actually 80% non-white. And so
Mm-hmm.
what we were thinking was, well, how can we create a school that's going to be focused, equity driven, that's going to be student centered and maritime focused, and really push to make sure that students who look like me, who look like you, who look like a lot of folks of color, have the opportunity to be able to have this experience. So that, in my opinion, was just one way to think about data. Like we saw data in the maritime industry, it needed to flip, it needed to change. So let's take a district that's highly diverse, multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic. Let's create a school that's going to be a pilot program that will create the pipeline for the future for maritime. So that was one of the data-driven decisions that we were able to make as a school district. Um, Speaking as a teacher, to your point, right? Like, I felt like, I taught for 4 years and I feel like I became a better teacher every year going forward. But I remember in my first year of teaching, I had a lot of those dispositions as my mentor teacher had, right? Like we had the same mentor teacher, Shout
Yeah.
outs to Betty, Miss Betty Elliott. So she was amazing. So I learned a lot of things from her. And I remember homework was one of those things, and her system for homework was something that I took with me into my first year. And what I was noticing in my first year as a teacher was that a lot of my students just weren't doing the homework, right? And so I had made this negative assumption that, oh, they don't care about my class, or they
Mm.
don't care about mathematics. There's already a negative connotation and association with math, especially with younger adolescents, right? There's like this fear metric that comes with math. So I was making these negative assumptions. And then one day I decided to do like a survey and a poll amongst the class, like, hey, so here, I'm just going to send this Google survey out to you all. I want you to answer it. It'll be totally anonymous, so I won't know who said it, even though I probably could figure out who said what, but they didn't know, right? And so I basically did this poll, and I got the qualitative data back. And essentially, a lot of my students actually had a myriad of responsibilities after outside of school, and not necessarily connected with the school community extracurricular. It was more about, I got to take care of my little brother. I have a
Mm.
job. I have to be able to provide for my little brother and sister and help with the household. And so I started thinking about things from a homework perspective as, oh, I might need to rethink how much I'm giving, and also restructuring what does it look like in order for students to be able to review the content. So I started pushing a lot of the stuff that I would give for homework inside the class structure,
Mm-hmm.
trying to create more opportunities for collaboration and teaming in groups, as well as made homework optional. Because at that moment, I had a revelation that homework essentially might be perpetuating a middle class thought and process. And so I'm putting a middle class thought and process on students who don't necessarily come from that particular background or don't have that socioeconomic status, right? Because a lot of our families who, uh, at least in the school district I was working in North Carolina, a lot of the students who weren't having issues with doing the homework, they had the assets at home, right?
Yeah.
They had the opportunity to get the tutoring that they needed, or their families could afford for them to go to the mathnasiums, to go to the Kumons, to go to the civil and learning centers. And so I had to really rethink and reimagine, okay, how can I make sure I'm more supportive? And so I think a lot of that qualitative data helped me make that decision. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. Did you know that data driven organizations were 19 times more profitable? 19. You heard me right. Perhaps you're asking, what is data driven and how do I become one of those organizations? I'm so glad you asked. I want you to go take a quiz. It's a simple, quick quiz to help you assess if you are, in fact, one of those organizations. Head over to mogulbeginnings.com/data into dollars quiz now. That's mogulbeginnings.com. You can just go to mogulbeginnings.com and it'll show you the data into dollars quiz. Take it now. You'll see if you're on your way to 19xing your profitability. You're listening to Numbers Don't Lie on KCCR Cityscape. We hope you're enjoying the tunes and all the jams. Make sure you visit our website over at brownstoneworldwide.com to learn about all things Brownstone. You can check out Brownstone Living Magazine and all the great things that we have on the website, as well as the shop. You just got to head over to the website, brownstoneworldwide.com.
Keeping it locked to KCCR Radio,
my station,
the Brownstone Center. And don't forget, no matter where you go, there we are.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And even to just do it at a classroom level, I think that's something that could be done at a greater level, because you're right. When, especially when our generation, we weren't that far removed from our students, but at the same time we were. Like, times had really
Mhm.
changed by the time we became educators. And I don't know, like, the mindset was different. The focus on education was a little different. And so for me, so I didn't really relate to my students in the same way. And so it's like, it's
Yep.
easy to just be like, well, if you're not doing, like you said, if you're not doing it, means you don't care. Like, it's easy to keep that hat on because you didn't grow up like them. So I think that's
Yep.
phenomenal. And that's honestly a really great idea that a lot of administrators could do,
Mhm.
just to level set. What does my student population look like? What are their true needs? Because if we're structuring our education system around something that literally is just, they not even on the same plane. I love that
Yep.
you said we're just perpetuating that divide, where it's just like, where in
Yeah.
some places it's a digital divide. You keep wanting to do things that require the internet, they can't do it, so they're failing.
Yep.
Or that, like you said, now we're talking about education and the trajectory of education, where it's just like, you're getting this stuff done, you now have a future to go to college, and there's others at a disadvantage. So that's a fun. I gotta
Mhm.
make sure that hit the highlight reels. That was good.
Yeah. I'm just keeping it real, man. These are my learnings. So.
That's an awesome example of how data really can be used to change lives. And
Mhm.
just, I don't know, I think a lot of times people are afraid about what it is because we're so used to doing things a certain way. Because
Mhm.
absolutely, when you learn from an old school teacher and you were taught old school, you grew up old school, you assume that's the right way to do things. And it's so
Yep.
easy to hold on to that stuff and not care what it says. So that's a real kudos to you for even looking at it and then not being like, whatever. Because that happens.
Yeah.
You will look at it and be like, I'm gonna still do what I want to do. I'm gonna still do
Yep.
what what's traditional for us to do. So pew
Yeah.
pew pew pew.
Appreciate that.
Coming from where you come from, getting all the experience that you have, what do you, especially going back to, let's say, predominantly children of color area,
Mhm.
what type of resources would need to be pulled in from the community to really give them a quality education? Because I love how you said it's not that education has to always be this pipeline to college.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
I think that's something that we have to relearn, especially our generation, because our parents told us, you going to college,
Yeah.
and that was it. Like,
Yeah.
and at least from in my household, that was it, and a lot of my friends, that was it. But just
Mhm.
really rethinking that, what resources will be needed from the outside to really give children the education they deserve.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you make me think about like my one of my fundamental ideological like underpinnings of how I just function and operate in education is one, I believe that we have to celebrate the students who go directly into the workforce the
Mhm.
same way we celebrate students who go directly into college universities, the 2 year and the 4 year programs. I think
Mhm.
we got to demystify and deconstruct that normalized
Yeah.
assumption about one is higher than the other or one looks better than the other. And that's been something that's been perpetuated for years as the college institution has been around, or the institution of college has been around, excuse me. So that's something I want to help demystify and deconstruct. I also really value and I'm really passionate about cross collaboration when it comes to education. And what I mean by that is how are we finding community partnerships? How are we accessing the funds of knowledge from the families and the communities that can actually create cities as laboratories or and also create schools as community hubs, right? Like I think when we think about schools, I think a lot of people just view them as places where students go, and there's like this banking concept. Like Paulo Freire talks about this banking concept where the teacher or the lecturer is the one who's the expert and has all the knowledge. And then and then he or she deposits that into the
Mm-hmm.
students. And we got to kind of flip that or deconstruct that, because there's tons and tons of knowledge and information amongst the students, amongst the families, amongst the peers in the community. So how are we accessing the local businesses and the industries that are in the community, and how are they tapping into the schools in the community as well? And so I think about, I'm really passionate about project-based learning. And so if we can think about things that are in the community that will directly impact what is happening, addressing the challenges, and giving those problems to the students, right? To
Mm-hmm.
help them like figure out and solve those problems, right? Because it's essentially what we're raising as the future generation, and they're going to be the ones that are tackling these challenges. So if we can give them the problems and challenges now, and allow them to have almost like schools as a think tank for students to be able to wrestle with them. That's what project-based learning is really all about. That problem posing, thinking about how would you address this challenge, not necessarily about grades and numbers numerically, but like what experiences are you getting that's created to a level of mastery? What experiences are you getting that are connected to critical thinking?
Mm-hmm.
What experiences are you getting to make you uh, a better contributing citizen to society, right? And developing your own moral imperatives. So I'm just thinking about, we need to reimagine what schools really, the real purpose are, and also how do we reimagine them, thinking about cross collaboration with community partnerships, organizations in the community that can really feed into the schools and help them to align not only the community values, but also it's like a two-way street where the students are feeding into the community and the community is also feeding into the school.
I love that. That's a phenomenal perspective. So I'm glad you hit
Mhm.
on the critical thinking, because I do think the traditional structure of school can, even though like being a student, I remember kind of parts of it. But unless you took certain classes,
Mhm.
there the opportunities to really critically think and to think outside the box and to even imagine yourself solving real problems wasn't there. And I mean that may
Mhm.
be intentional, you know, the the the
It
the
was.
school the school to workforce pipeline, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
do they really want a whole bunch of creative thinkers? I don't know. Uh, but you know.
You got to be able to yeah. We got to be able to foster the genius in every child, though. And I
Yeah.
think the more that we can do that, I think we will create a better society and future for the
Mhm.
generations that are coming after us. I mean, our ancestors, you know, used to dream radical dreams of us to be able to sit on this computer screen right now and have these conversations about freedom and liberation. So why can't we think about that in terms of what schools could look like? Like, how do we liberate some of the imaginary chains that are there to allow for students to grow and shine and flourish.
Love that.
Mhm.
So, you being a black male educator, so there I don't know if you've heard these statistics, you probably have because you're really smart. So I'm just going to read a few. So, it said black students who had at least one black teacher by the third grade were 13% more likely to enroll in college. I actually don't know if I had a black teacher by the third grade, but
Mm, yeah.
and then it says having a black teacher increased students' math and reading scores regardless of students' race. And there's statistics like this across many fields, even in health. So
Hmm.
having a black physician in the county increases overall population health. So there's something
Hmm.
to when you allow marginalized groups to take on leadership positions. So how do you see um I guess what's your vision for that diversity, like bringing diversity not necessarily to the workforce but to education, so that way they can experience these different cultures? Because whether these large corporations want to admit it or not, diversity really can drive revenue growth. So like being able to see that at an early age, like really want to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that diversity is for me, when it comes to diversity, I'm thinking about not just like race and ethnicity. I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
about like intersectionality. So like
Mm-hmm.
all the different identity markers that you bring. And I think from that, when we think about diversity, a diverse perspectives is the birthplace of innovation.
Yeah.
So by having multiple people in organizations from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, I think you're going to birth from that levels of innovation that's going to push your organization and community further than it has ever been.
Right.
I also believe that in heterogeneous classroom structures where there are a multitude of abilities in the classroom. So I know that a lot of people in education now are moving more towards that, which is great, right? So kind of moving away from the quote unquote tracking systems that had inherently been weight cogs in the system that have allowed for more Black and brown children to be in the quote unquote lower level
Mm-hmm.
courses, non-honors courses, and our non-white and white students particularly to be in the higher levels classes and getting a different level of instruction. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
heterogeneous aspect of that is super important as well, and it provides a real world scenario for students because when they go out in the real world, it's not going to be tracked in that way where, oh, this job is honors or this job is AP driven or IB driven, so I think it does provide a better representation of the world, and I'll keep it U.S. centric, right? Like I think I was reading somewhere that by 2040, um, people of color are going to be the majority in the United States of America, and
Ooh, don't
so
say that too loud.
but I hate that we have to censor that, but it's true,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so we have to really start thinking about systems and structures that are beyond the education system. We have to think about governmental officials. We have to think about the federal policies that are in place that unfortunately might have impacted people of color for years and years, and so we have to make changes with that to ensure that those who have been historically excluded um, for years and years, that policy doesn't impact them or continues to perpetuate the exclusion. And so I think there is having to this data and the stats that you just presented about having a Black educator. I think those need to be amplified more,
Mm-hmm.
especially as we move into the next generation of people who are going to be looking for people that look like them,
Absolutely.
right? And be looking for mentorship and leadership that looks like them.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite books is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And it's a powerful quote that says, "How can I be like you when I don't see me?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just something that we have to reckon with as a nation,
Yeah.
knowing that with the presidential election that's coming down the pike right now, no matter which way it goes, I think that that will be something telling for the next generation, for them
Mm-hmm.
to have belief that they can also be or aspire to positions like that. I think that's why, Obama being elected back in '08 to 2016 was so powerful, right? Like, I think about my son, who that's all he saw from birth to his eighth birthday, right? Like, was Obama in leadership, right? And so it's just, I think that gave something for him to be able to say, oh yeah, like he can do it, I can do it too. And so I think there's power in seeing intersectionality, seeing diversity, and it's something that we shouldn't necessarily be afraid of. I think it's something that we should
Absolutely.
embrace.
This was so good. I'm so glad we did this.
Me too, me too.
So,
I'm
could you
grateful.
tell people how to connect with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for just allowing me to be in the space with you on your platform. You're doing some amazing things, Dr. Michelle. I won't call you your nickname, but thank you for this opportunity. Folks can easily find me on social media platforms. You can just type in my name, Tremaine, at Tremaine Holloway, and I normally pop up. But it's Trey Holla on all social media platforms, TREHOLLA. So you can find me that way.
And I don't want to know that his Tremaine does not have an E on in his name. Okay. So if
That is
there's
true.
another Tremaine Holloway, he's the one with no E on the end.
That is true. Yes. I appreciate you doing that. I care a lot about that.
Listen, people spell my name with two L's all the time. There is
Uh-huh.
there is a Michelle Josie on Facebook that has
Oh
one
wow.
L, and then
Oh.
there's a Michelle Josie that lives somewhere in Florida that her email is so close to mine that I get some of her emails, and I almost thought it was fraud because I
Oh
was
wow.
like, who's she was like, no, this is real. I got their license. I'm like, oh, okay, so
Wow.
Even as
Wow.
unique as my name is, somebody else
Yeah.
got it.
I love it. I love it. Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Crazy. So, anywho, I'm grateful too. This has been phenomenal. I can't wait for others to hear it. You can find me on all social media as Dr. Michele Josie or just Michele Josie. Look me up on LinkedIn. Um, my business is Mogul Beginnings. You can find me on all things Mogul Beginnings. That's MOGUL. Yeah. Yes. And then make sure you follow us on Brownstone Worldwide. That's where the platform that you're listening to this on. So connect with us on all things Brownstone as well. I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. And until